Welcome back to America Decides, and I will say it again, happy Friday. A number of House districts in the United States that historically voted Democratic have made a pretty noticeable shift to the right. That is according to the Cook Political Report's newly published 2025 Cook Partisan Voting Index, which determined that these shifts are a result of pretty significant inroads President Trump made with people of color in the 2024 election. David Wasserman is here to further discuss. He is the senior editor and elections analyst for the Cook Political Report with Amy Walter. David, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. This is a highly granular conversation, and you are expert at that granularity. So please let our audience know in broad strokes what you found.
Well, thanks, Major. You know, the 2024 election was very fiercely fought. It was a very negative campaign, obviously, but the results actually demonstrated some geographic depolarization of the electorate because Donald Trump's biggest inroads were with working class non-white voters in urban areas of the country. It partially explains why we saw an erasure of the gap between the Electoral College and the popular vote. He won both of those by running up the score in Florida and Texas and cutting into Democrats' margins in New York and California, predominantly with Hispanic voters, but also with subsets of Asian, Middle Eastern voters, and minor gains with black voters, particularly young men. And so what that has the effect of doing, we've seen the Republicans trade support among whites with college degrees who used to support them a great deal in exchange for more minority support. And that is a trade that has benefited them on the presidential level because working class non-whites are more numerous. But on the congressional level, most of those minority voters live in urban, heavily Democratic districts that aren't about to flip Republican, whereas a lot of the more affluent voters that Trump has alienated live in the swing districts that decide control of the House, which is good news for Democrats' prospects of winning back that chamber in 2026.
And speaking of 2026, David, the biggest question that always surrounds movements like this is, are they Trump-specific or are they Republican Party generic?
Well, this has been the political realignment that has defined the Trump era. He has alienated groups of voters that were free trade, were traditional conservatives, kind of your Paul Ryan, Mitt Romney set of voters, while embracing a populism that has broken through with some traditionally Democratic groups of voters. Now, of course, he won in 2024 because a lot of those middle income or lower income voters believed that he would rein in inflation. And if they're not seeing those results, particularly in the wake of these tariffs, then many of them could either sit out the 2026 or 28 elections, or they could flip to Democrats. Fundamentally, the problem for Republicans is that Trump's voters, they show up in force for Trump, but they're not reliable in off-year or special elections. I think we're about to see that in 2025, 2026. We already saw that in two special elections in Florida this week where Republican candidates woefully underperformed.
And David, what has happened in the 2024 election projecting forward in terms of swing states and either split ticket voting or straight ticket voting?
Yeah, so we've seen the number of swing districts and swing states collapse over time. For example, in 1960, there were 30 states out of 50 that were in the single digits in terms of margin between John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon. And that collapsed to fewer than 15 this time around. And in terms of swing districts, just 25 years ago, there were 164 House districts out of 435 that voted within 5 points of the national outcome. And that has collapsed to 87 today. Now, we did see a slight rebound from the historic low of 71 swing districts amid Trump's first election. However, the rise in straight ticket voting, meaning fewer and fewer voters are splitting their tickets between president and Congress, they're just voting for one party down the ballot, it has really limited the number of competitive races. So we're talking about a very narrow battlefield of races that Democrats and Republicans will be spending an awful lot of money on between now and next November. Obviously, there's a long way to go, but based on history, Democrats ought to be considered the slight favorites to get at least the 3 seats they need to retake that chamber.
And David, very quickly, anything, you mentioned a little bit about the Florida specials, anything in the 2 Florida specials or the Wisconsin State Supreme Court race this week that stands out to you?
Shows that Democrats have woken up. And whereas in 2017, when Trump was elected the first time, there was an immediate reaction to Trump, and candidates were filing. There was the Women's March. It was really from day one. I think it took some time this year for Democrats to re-engage because they had been so fatigued from fighting Trump over the course of the last decade. They were demoralized, and they still don't have a great deal of faith in their own party. But the big advantage for an out party is that you don't need a clear leader or a clear unifying message. All you have to do is be the alternative if voters don't like the direction the country is headed under the president. And that's what we're seeing right now.
Nobody better at the granular details of American politics than David Wasserman. David, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Major.